Hi everyone, my name is Becky. I'm one of the educators here at Crow Canyon. I'd like to welcome you all to our ancestral Pueblo room block.
Hi guys, I'm Tyson and I'm an educator here at Crow Canyon, and today I'm going to talk a little bit about the tower that we have at our Pueblo Learning Center. So you guys probably already saw what it looked like from down below, but here we are up top, and if you look around, it's a pretty good view, right? You have a 360-degree view and you can see all the horizons on the landscape. Now we think this might be one of the reasons that they could have been building these towers. We don't know for sure. There are some things that archaeologists can't answer with certainty. And we don't know exactly why they built towers, but we think that they certainly could have used something like this as a lookout. Maybe you're watching weather on the horizon. Maybe you're looking for game animals or making sure that rabbits aren't eating your corn crops. This would be a great place to kind of observe your surroundings. You could also use a tower to communicate, though. So we think that maybe if another Pueblo was across the canyon and they had a tower, we would be easily able to communicate with them, either through sound or visual things like that. So that's another reason that towers might have been built. They could have also been used as storage. That's another thought, is that maybe they were sort of like a corn silo that we use today, and that they would store food in here, but I don't know that there's a tremendous amount of evidence to support that theory either. Point being, these towers were not around for very long. They were really primarily constructed kind of late in the Puebloan occupation here, in the Pueblo III period, and once they migrated, they didn't really seem to have an interest in building them anymore. So they're sort of a unique thing for this time period in this part of the Southwest, and thanks for listening.
In our ancestral Pueblo room block, this room block has 5 different rooms in it, and this is one of the rooms that we have. In the room, as you can see in this corner, here is our fireplace. And most of our villages have fireplaces that are on the corners and never really in the center. And if you take a look, you can see the walls. It's got this nice block of sandstone, and then the smaller sandstone you can see in between are what we call chinking stones. And the chinking stones are kind of a curious thing on what archaeologists seem to think they're not really sure what they are. So the chinking stones, some archaeologists think that they're used for when the mortar is wet and you put the stones in, it helps with that shrinking process. Okay. And so you can see the small chinking stones, but you have to kind of keep in mind that all these rooms you won't see because of the plaster that's in the rooms. So besides this window that's closed off, we also have wall niches. So you can see in this little wall niche, you can see we have a nice mug, which goes with this Pueblo village time period. Okay, so we got the Pueblo, we got the mug with the T-shaped doorway, and then we also have corrugated pottery. Corrugated pottery and the mug go with this Pueblo room block for this time period. During this time period, we know that the ancestral Pueblo people had access to cotton. Cotton is a trade item that is coming in. In this area, cotton, it's a little too cold to grow cotton. And so we know that it's traded in from the people from the south coming in. And one of my things is oftentimes as a Native person, people always tend to think that Native people never wore clothes. And so I wanted to show some of the clothing that the people would have worn this time during this time period. So keep in mind this would have been cotton. And so this would have been woven. And so you can see that it's woven, it's cotton. And so we think that the men are the ones who actually might have been the weavers for this time period. So I always think of it in the way of like, if your father was making your dress for you, what would it look like? And so as girls, when you think about it, here it is, you got this, and then he's going to make it to the size that he needs, and he's going to turn around and he's going to make another one. So what he does then, he opens up one side, sews the other side with one opening and for the arm here. And so that way you can put the dress on and slip it on. So it's almost like what the Romans wore. And so you would have the dress there, but then you would also have a nice woven belt that would actually wrap around it and keep it there together. And so as part of the clothing. And of course the guys would have worn a breechcloth. And I think everybody would have worn the breechcloth as well, because on these not nice hot summer days, everybody's wearing it. And so we have a nice little breechcloth, and as the weather starts to change and get a little bit cooler, we do have examples in different museums where it shows they actually wore t-shirts, almost like our t-shirts today. And here's another example of part of clothing that people would have worn. So this just wraps around the person, and you can see that they actually put a nice little design on it. And the black color that you see are what they're used to dye. They're using plant dye to get that color of black. And so it would have had that on it as well. And as it starts to get colder and colder, we have examples of turkey feather blankets. So here's a turkey feather blanket, and as you can see, I can actually put my fingers through it. And what we find out is that they actually, when they were making it, made a nice long string out of yucca and got the turkey feathers and put that in between the weaving of the string, and then poked it together and wove it in and out of each other, and so that this turkey feather blanket would last a really long time. So if you think about turkey feathers, think about how we use turkey feathers today, or even goose down feathers. So we have jackets that are goose down. We have on your bed down comforters. And so these are things that we still use today. So we had the example of that. And of course, you got to have jewelry. People had jewelry. So here is a turkey bone bracelet that people would have worn as well. You have an example of the berries, juniper berries, with a nice little stone that they would have ground down and made a nice little necklace out of. Here is, of course, a red-tailed hawk claw, also with turkey bone. So you would have had that. So, of course, jewelry would have been part of the accessory that you have. Because if you think about it, and you got this whole room in here, how people are sleeping, you, of course, have to hang up a lot of your clothes. Okay, just like I was talking about earlier and how we actually hang up a number of things, this would have also been a place where we would have hung some nice dried plants, or even like for medicine. And if you look here, here's a little bit of dog bane that people would have used. Besides yucca cordage, you can use dog bane, and you can also use sinew, which is really good to make rope out of. And so this actually happens to be yucca. And so this would have been another place where people would have hung some of the various items that they needed to use. All right, so still in the same room, you can see that, you know, people are thinking about when they're making their structure, how to put up things. The shelf was actually built in as people were working on the structure and building it. And we know that in all native cultures, we don't ever waste anything. And so the antlers would have been kept, and people would have made various items with the antlers as well. And so that would have been built there. And what kind of wood people are using, if you take a look here at the roof, you can see we got these nice big beams coming out, going straight across. In front of me here, you can see they actually go on the outside as well. The roof itself is actually juniper. Juniper is a tree that is outside that most bugs don't like. And so juniper is a great tree to use because insects won't eat it most of the time. Okay, part of the architecture of this room, if you take a look at, we did make this room way bigger than what the ancestral Pueblo people would have made. This room would have easily been 4 rooms. And so you take a look, we got these doorways, and of course these doorways are a lot bigger than the ancestral Pueblo people had. But the curious thing is why people are making square doorways. And then if you come on over on this side, you can see we have a T-shaped doorway. And T-shaped doorways are still, archaeologists are always wondering, why is there a T-shaped doorway? There are many theories. If you talk to Pueblo people about what T-shaped doorways are, there are many explanations of what they could be. And so it's part of the mystery, I guess, so to speak, of why people would have made doorways. And if you look at our floor, you can see the floor, it's not cement. It's actually hard, compact adobe. And the floors would have looked like this when the ancestral Pueblo people lived here as well. Okay, so in this room, this is a room that the archaeologists call a mealing room. And as you can see, well, you can't really see, but there are actually 4 of the mealing bends that are happening in this area. And we know that in most Pueblo cultures, it's the women that are the ones that are actually, women and girls that are doing the corn grinding. And so men don't ever grind corn, or boys. And so it's a female thing. And I've never had this confirmed, but I was told that it takes 1 hour of grinding corn for one person for one meal. And I always like to say, man, if I grew up with 6 older brothers, and I hope and pray that they got married and left soon, because that's 6 hours of grinding corn just for them. And so we know that we find people are using it. What you're doing is you're getting the mono, and you can see the wear that's happening on the mono, and what they're doing is they're pushing down on the corn and going back and forth and grinding it. And so you can see here, and it depends on which Pueblo you come from. One Pueblo, I was told that they use it rough, and then medium, and medium to fine. So it depends on which Pueblo you come from and how they grind their corn. But this is also a great gathering place for the girls or the women to talk while they're grinding corn. In this room, this is actually the weaving room. And we know that the ancestral Pueblo people did the weaving, and like I had said earlier, the men, we think, were the ones who were weaving. And they had the access to the cotton, but you can see here on this weaving room, we got the warp and the weft that is happening, and you can see the string coming down. And then what they would have done is come all the way up as they were weaving. And in this room is where we actually teach you how to do a little bit of weaving. Although, we're not experts, and it's actually a pretty easy process that we have. And so we have the room where you can learn a little bit about weaving and the techniques of it.
All right, guys, so I wanted to talk a little bit about some of the games that the ancestral Pueblo people might have played. I think it's natural to assume that kids play games no matter what culture they're a part of, and we certainly know that modern Pueblo kids play games, and there's ethnographic evidence of certain games being played a long, long time ago. And it's possible that some of these games were even played prehistorically. There has been some archaeological evidence in context that may indicate that these were games that they were playing maybe even 700-800 years ago. So the first one I'm going to show you is called a whip top, and it's pretty simple. It's a whip and a top. And the way it works is you want to take this string and wrap it around the top all the way so you get that string nice and tight up against the stick. Now make sure you're paying attention to which direction you're wrapping that string around that top, because when you pull it out, it's going to be rotating a specific way, and you want to make sure that you're whipping it that same way, because if you whip it the opposite direction, you're just going to stop it in its tracks. The whole point of the game is to get this top spinning and use this whip to keep it spinning as long as I can. Okay? So let's give it a shot. Oh, last one. There you go. There's whip top.
Hi guys, another example of a game that ancestral Puebloan people would play is corn cob darts. So as you can see, I have a dart here made out of corn cob, some feathers, and it's got a stick at the end. And this is a good example of what we find in the prehistoric record. For our darts, they don't have the pointy end, but we do have our corn cob and our feathers. And people would normally toss these into a basket or some other thing they have on hand. So we're going to try it and see if I can make it in our makeshift basket, which is a hat. And there you go. As long as you have a target, some corn cobs, and some feathers, you can play this game at home. Another game ancestral Pueblo people may have played is called the bull roar. This is a bull roar. It's a simple piece of wood tied to a string. They're usually painted, and pretty basic how you do it. You hold the string out, kind of like a yo-yo, but you just spin it. And one trick that we found with the bull roars, to make it make better sound, you have to tap it on a solid surface. Don't know why it works, but here it goes.
The next game that we know that people played all over the world was string game. And so people would have had the string here together like this. It's also known as cat's cradle. And the one that I'm going to show you how to do is called the worm. So you put it over your hand like this. You're going to grab that string, turn it to the right, put it over the pointy finger that you're pointing with. It's going to go grab the string in between my fingers, turn it to the right, put it in your middle finger. Pull down on the string, go in between your middle finger and your ring finger, pull it through, turn it to the right, put that over your ring finger. Pull it tight, put it again through your ring finger and your pinky. Turn it to the right. Put it over your pinky, pull it tight, and there's the worm. So next thing I want to do is I want to get rid of the worm. So I'm just going to pull my string through, and there you go.